What if heterosexuality was not innate, but something women were taught, expected, and even pressured into? What if there was an alternative to the dissatisfaction, confusion, and harm many women experience in relationship with men?
What if sexual orientation wasn't fixed as we've been told, but it could change? What if any woman could be a lesbian? If this were true, what would you choose to do?
Right now, more and more women are stepping away from men, and many are saying something that surprises even themselves. I wish I was a lesbian.
I'm Michelle Kerwin.
And I'm Tabata Spinster. And this is I Wish I Was a Lesbian, a channel exploring the ideas behind the book I Wish I Was a Lesbian, Woman's Life Beyond Heterosexuality, published by Spinny Flex Press.
I'm Angela Wild. We are a feminist activist, and on this channel, we will be unpacking the question behind the statement, I wish I was a lesbian.
We'll be discussing the book, sharing our own reflections, and speaking with women who have stepped away from heterosexuality, asking what that means, what it changes, and whether it's possible for women to choose a different path.
We'll also challenge the idea that sexual orientation is innate or fixed and explore how social expectations and political repression shape women's relationships, desires, and choices. We'll be posting regular discussions, reflections, and conversations around the themes of the book and beyond, creating an ongoing dialogue.
At first, we will focus on interviewing the women who contributed to the book about their own journey to lesbianism and how they will answer this question. I wish I was a lesbian, but I can't. In time, we will invite more women to discuss different aspects of the ideas around sexuality, desire, relationships, and choice.
Voila, so that's a little introduction. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and what brought me to this journey, and then Michelle and Tabata will do the same. My name is Angela Wild. I am a feminist and an artist. I'm based in the UK. I am the editor of I Wish I Was a Lesbian, Women's Lives Beyond Heterosexuality. And how I got involved in this project, really, it's a long story. 13 years ago, I've heard Sheila Jeffreys in a conference explain how women in the second wave liberation movement in the UK were becoming lesbians, a lot of them, at the same time, as a result of their implication in the movement. They were spending a lot of time together, and they were understanding the role heterosexuality played in their oppression. And Sheila said, addressing the women in the room, that so many women were becoming lesbian at the time, and so will we. That sentence unlocked something very profound in me, and it made sense immediately. And I decided there and then in the room that this is what I wanted. It turns out I didn't have to be born a lesbian after all. It turns out that there was no such thing as a gay gene or a lesbian brain, that sexuality is a behavior can change, and this is what I did, I changed. So a few months after that, I left my husband and I left heterosexuality behind and called myself a lesbian, and I never looked back. But this came after a long period of feminist activism, but also a lot of reading that led to a greater awareness. At the time, I was reading a lot of radical feminism, a lot of lesbian feminism, and also did a lot of consciousness raising. I confronted the reality of my life under heterosexuality, the influence of pornography, the several forms of male violence I had known, and the imposition of femininity in the media. And all this contributed to my own oppression, but also how I was thinking about myself. And I started to notice that I was shifting. When I heard Sheila Jeffreys speak, the idea of becoming a lesbian made sense to me because I was ready to hear it. I was not defensive because nothing was imposed on me. It was an invitation. It was really like saying, this is what you want, then it's possible for you. And it turns out this is what I wanted. It also turns out that looking at male oppression of women and the reality of patriarchy in the face, I had become very uninterested by men. I had stopped finding them attractive, and after more than a decade in an abusive marriage and a lifetime of sexual harassment at work and in the street, I had stopped believing the myth that heterosexuality was the fairy tale happy ending, the destiny and natural path of women. I also had stopped having sex with my husband, because it was not only unsatisfactory, it was really a soul-crushing experience. And even before lesbianism came along in my life, I started imagining an alternative way to relate based on equality, on mutual respect, not on objectification or on power and control. I realized then I could never have that with a man. Equal relationships are impossible between people who are treated so differently in society. The power dynamic extends in the home, in the bedroom, and in the bed. So I came to lesbianism because of the promise of the possibility of an equal and respectful relationship, which I eventually found. And I decided to work on the book because I wanted to share what I had discovered in my life, and I thought it might be useful to others. So here I am.
I'm Michelle Kerwin. When I discovered radical feminism in my 30s, I threw myself at it completely, read books, listened to podcasts, watched all of the YouTube videos. I discovered first and second wave feminists, lesbian feminists, women that I didn't even know existed. And it opened up a whole new world to me. I got involved in grassroots activism, but I was still having a relationship with a man, and that internal conflict was really hard. Because at the same time, my understanding of the world was shifting entirely. I was starting to see heterosexuality different, not just as a personal choice, but as something much, much bigger, as a systematic method of control. I started to think about my past. I came out as a lesbian for the first time, age 19, and then went back into heterosexuality in my late 20s. I never really understood why until I learned about compulsory heterosexuality, and I was able to, thanks to feminists, step away from it. For years, I told myself lesbian had just been a phase. That's what everyone says. But the more I learned, the more I had to ask myself, could I claim that label again? Could I step outside of compulsory heterosexuality? What would that even look like? These are the questions every woman deserves the time and space to be able to answer. Questioning heterosexuality at its root is a foundational part of radical feminism. It's also about questioning something most of us just were never taught to question. This is what I hope this channel can do for other women, what feminism did for me, open a door you didn't even know was there.
I am Tabata Spinster, a multidisciplinary artist and lesbian feminist based in Mexico. I was born and raised in the confines of a conservative, Catholic, and nationalist family who had a clear understanding of the roles of women and men in family and society. Unfortunately for them, I always felt drawn to women in all aspects of my life, and these connections were always a source of persecution and questioning within my family. At 19, I was groomed into a relationship with a man 24 years older than me, and it wasn't until I got the divorce almost 2 years later that I first heard the word misogyny. Until then, I had lived my life believing that my bad luck with men was something wrong with me, and not a system that coerces women into subordination. I began to delve into feminism from that point onward and understood the invisible violence behind all the romantic bonds I have with men through all my life. But more importantly, I began to try to understand why none of the romantic relationship with women that I had to try to build in the past have worked out. After a year of the divorce, I started a relationship with a woman I met at university. It was a very chaotic relationship and with the framework of bisexuality. It was a beautiful relationship at first, but it became filled with violence. Unconsciously, we were both replicating heterosexual dynamic, including jealousy, possessiveness, and verbal abuse. All of this combined with pressure from my family caused the relationship to fall apart. The oppression of women has many faces, and economic violence is one of its most brutal. My family threatened me to stop supporting my studies if I continued dating women. I was afraid I couldn't be able to pursue my dream of becoming a photographer without their help. I began my last relationship with a man as a result of that pressure and economic violence. Obviously, it was disastrous. I was exploited emotionally, professionally, and sexually during that relationship. It was until this ended that I understood the centrality of heterosexuality to patriarchy and its subsystems, such as capitalism. It was around that time that radical feminism came to me. I realized the only thing that has sustained my relationship with men was patriarchal indoctrination, reinforced by all its institutions and social dynamics. The personal is political took on a real and practical meaning beyond just a catchy feminist slogan. Ideology and social violence in all its forms were what kept me connected to them, not some unexplicable orientation or attraction that overpowers me and borders on the irrational and mystical in the purest religious sense. When everything clicked, something shifted in me. I understood that the only way to live authentically was through lesbianism, to live for and with women, More than 8 years have passed since I chose to be a lesbian, and I have a life I never imagined, not even in my wildest dreams. This is why the book project and this channel excited me so much. I hope that more women can see themselves reflected in the experiences of all of us who collaborated on this project and who wrote and spoke from the lived experience and joy of being lesbians.
Thank you. So I started the book and then the channel because I kept seeing the same conversation happening everywhere. Women were leaving men, questioning heterosexuality and recognizing its limitation and wondering what alternative exists. At the same time, many feel that lesbianism is something that is closed off to them, even when they wished for it. We wanted to create a space to explore those questions openly, politically, but honestly, and to connect with other women who are asking these questions. The discussion around the born this way narrative, whether we are born heterosexual or lesbian, is stopping women from having the possibility of exploring beyond. And we're here to talk about our experience and knowledge and share tools with others who are interested in challenging and discussing this idea and investigating their own heterosexuality and if they want to stay in it. So I guess the first question I wanted to ask us is what motivated us to start this channel? I would like to start with that question.
I think I can start. I got really excited when you invited me to be part of the project, not only in the art way, but only writing an essay. And then I realized that there is no such thing as this book, and there is not a place on the internet where you can have these conversations, and that they are like so diverse because this book has women from different parts of the world. And I got really excited because there is no space in the internet where we can discuss these themes openly and without all of the violence and bad intention criticism that is out there. So I think that we all deserve a space where we can discuss and where we can reflect our experiences in a lesbian feminist way and not in a like guilt tripping way and stuff like that. And I really appreciate that we are taking the time to do this because I think that we are going to touch women in a really profound way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Well, not I kind of agree. I do agree. And it always brings me back to my favorite Dworkin quote where she talks about women resisting feminism because it's an agony to be fully conscious of the brutal misogyny which permeates our culture, society, and all of our personal relationships. I think this is like really true for women in heterosexuality. And especially when you're trying to come out of it because realizing what's been done to you in heterosexuality without it being your choice or your decision, it can be really brutal, to use her word, to come through that and work through it and see it, and it's really hard. But once it's done, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think more women need to know about it. That's my reasoning for it. I think if I could have heard this when or read this book or had this YouTube channel when I first came out at 19, I don't think I would have ever been taken back into heterosexuality.
Yeah. I really resonate with some things that you both say. One is the emotional toll that the silencing can have on women. In fact, it's a way to stop us thinking when we are being told you're not allowed to say this, you're not allowed to think it, you're not allowed to make a decision about your life. And I really hope that this space is a space where women allow themselves to think outside of all these injunction, not to think. So allow to think outside of patriarchal framework that tells you that you are born a certain way when there's no evidence of it. That's my first motivation. It was really important for me to give a platform because women who think like us in my community are the norm. this is how I came to be a lesbian. So I know loads of women who don't think that there is a gay gene. And in fact, because of the way that society is structured and because of the way that this discussion is silenced, there's no platform for us. There's no platform for them. And I wanted to give the opportunity for women to speak about it if they wanted to. But also, I was really lucky, as I said in my introduction, to hear that from Sheila Jeffries. And I want to give back. I want to give, you know, that knowledge and hope that women find it useful for them, really. Michelle, you were starting talking about the reality of compulsory heterosexuality, and that's going to be my second question. What is compulsory heterosexuality? Who does it affect? How does it work? You know, how would we explain that to women who've never heard of it? And how do we explain that to women even who've heard of it? Because I hear all sorts of different definitions flying around the internet. How do you understand it, Tabata?
Well, for me, compulsory heterosexuality, it's like the compound of dynamics that makes you fit into the heterosexual role within society. For me, it is one of the pillars to the key points of patriarchy, because without it, they cannot convince you to spend the rest of your life with them, because we are seeing all over the world women are starting to say no in every aspect of life with men. They don't like to be around them. They don't want to date them, because we are collectively understanding that we are forced into labor, into giving birth, into, accept all of these exploitive roles that are given to us. And compulsory heterosexuality, it's in everything, in the family, in religion, of course, because every religion is sustained by the myth of heterosexuality and the original sin and stuff like that. When you look around, everything has a root in heterosexuality. The media, the movies, the culture, it's heterosexuality. Everything is taking you to that path. Even the LGBT stuff like that leads you to heterosexuality, because everything is based on this dynamic of feminine, masculine, and what it means, the societal roles that they define within us. So yes, all of the "you were born that way" is compulsory heterosexuality, because I don't know, like, only colonial systems put you in this position of, if you are born in this place, you are this thing. And I don't know, for me, coming from Mexico and having all of this historical background of colony and caste and stuff like that, it was relatively easy to me to link heterosexuality to colonialism and oppressive systems, because they are determining you from the moment that you are born, and they say you are this race, you are this economical position, you are heterosexual, and you cannot move from this box that it's everything doesn't exist in the reality beyond of the violence of patriarchy, because the only way that all of this oppressive system exists is because men push them in a violent way against us, but they are not real. They are just ideas that came into reality because of violence. They have no sustain away from that violence. And yes, compulsory heterosexuality, it's active violence against women.
So I think compulsory heterosexuality affects all women, all of us, every single one of us, from the minute we're born. We're being trained into being a good wife, clean the house, do the cooking. I know that sounds quite old-fashioned, but it's still the way that kids are taught to play. They're taught to play house with a mum and a dad and a baby and a buggy. And then it's like Tabitha's just said, it's every movie, every song is about falling in love with this man, or this movie where some the right man was just in front of you the whole time. You just didn't see him. I grew up Catholic, and so within that, there was compet is very heavy. When you're 7, you walk down the aisle in the church wearing a white wedding dress to take your first Holy Communion. So if that's not, compet, I don't know what is. Then you've got the constant questions from your family from being a little girl of, oh, you got a boyfriend yet? And then it's, when are you going to have a baby? When are you going to have a baby? Why don't you use this baby? Why don't you look after my baby to practice with? Because one day you're going to have one of your own. It's all of that. And each little thing, each little brick is just reinforcing it, reinforcing it, reinforcing it, reinforcing it. So you just assume that you're heterosexuality, that you are heterosexual because that's what you've been told and brought up to believe. It was second wave feminists that started to question that in the 70s during their consciousness raising sessions, when they coined the phrase the political is personal. They had to examine sexuality and women's relationships with men because it was impossible to ignore once they realized that it wasn't individual men in individual women's homes. It was all of the men.
I see it as a structure. In fact, I see it as a structure of oppression. As you said, Tabata, that every aspect of our society that is patriarchal, which is pretty much everything, has a part in it, but it's structural. It's just not there by chance. It's there because it was created, and it was created for one reason, is to have each woman attached to one man at least, and that man can extract the resources of us. And what I find incredible, and again, it reflects in what you were both saying, is that it's everywhere, but it's completely invisible. It's so everywhere, in fact, that it's invisible because everybody assumes it's normal, it's natural. And, granted, like, you need an amount of heterosexuality for the human race to not go extinct. I agree. But it does not mean at all that, you have to be married, or, it doesn't mean that porn needs to exist. Like each way that heterosexuality is actually experienced by women, pornography, choking, anal sex, fuck knows what, they invent to practice heterosexuality on us, has got no need, in nature. We don't need to be married to a man for the human race to carry on existing. We don't need to have certain sexual practices. How many times a week they decide is the right time. All this is an institution, and all this is constructed, and yet we are led to believe and groomed, in fact, to think that it's normal, that is natural, that we are born for this, and there is no way out of that. And yes, biological essentialism is a real big aspect of compulsory heterosexuality, because if you tell a population, and that's what you were saying, Tabata, if you tell a minority group or a group of oppressed people that they are born a certain way, it justifies the violence against them, but it means that you can't really think of yourself out of it because you're born like that. So hence all the racist model system in the world that always say that Black people are inferior while they deny them education. And that's what they did with women. And to me, heterosexuality is the same. It's something that men say women are for naturally, with no evidence whatsoever, and that we're supposed to just accept it. And we are very much silenced when we actually question it. In the second wave of feminism, women started to question that. And when you speak to women of the second wave, at least in Europe, but Tabata, tell us what it's like in Mexico, please. You hear a lot of women of that generation who say it was a no-brainer. Most women understood sexuality to be socially constructed, politically enforced. Of course, they were opting out of it because it makes sense. And that the return to a born this way narrative is in fact a bit later, but that it was also a strategy from the LGB at the time, the lesbian and gay movement, to say we are born this way, God made us this way, you have to accept us for what we are, we do not have a choice. Was not necessarily what they believed. This was a strategy to gain some rights.
I think on the surface it might be like a way of protection from society and a way of getting rights, but when you start to think deeply about that, it is not a feminist statement. It's not a feminist analysis of reality. It's just a narrative that makes you digestible for the system. In the behind of those words, what you are saying, I want to be assimilated and accepted into this society, into this frame of existence. And feminists do not want that. We do not want to be part of the patriarchal and capitalist system. We want to abolish it. We want to destroy it and to create something different. So saying that we were born this way and we cannot do anything about it, like this was like a religious curse on you, that you cannot take the homosexuality out of you and stuff like that. It's like, I cannot help it. This controls me beyond me. And of course, that narrative makes sense to patriarchy, to colonialism, and to capitalism, because those systems want you to believe that the control of yourself is outside of you. It's in God, it's in the government, it's in the, I don't know, like the culture or the traditions and stuff like that. And that is not a feminist statement. That is not an anti-colonialist statement. It's not an anti-capitalist statement. It's just a statement that keeps you safe and, yes, gives you rights in certain way. But I think it's not a feminist statement, and it's also not helping us to go anywhere, because it's just saying I am good in the place that we are as a society, and I just want to be part of it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tabata. I think that also it's a very defensive statement. It's not creating, it's not offensive. It's just, I'm really sorry. If I could change, I would change. But I can't, as you say. But also it's don't have a fight with me, because I'm not here to, like, it's not going to expand, like it's only me. I'm a like the way I read the Born This Way narrative is it's and that's the way it's explained by patriarchy, is you are in a way deviant. That's how you are. You are deviant. The norm is heterosexuality, patriarchy tell us. Then you are not the norm, you are deviant. And instead of saying, well, actually it's completely normal to be lesbian, women are wonderful, with saying, oh, well, if I could change, I would change. I would, I don't have the choice to be a lesbian, but don't worry, it can't spread. It stops with me. Whereas actually what lesbian feminists are saying is any woman can be a lesbian. It is good for you individually to be a lesbian. You've got much more chance of being, in an equal relationship if you're a lesbian. You've got much more chance of avoiding men's violence if you're a lesbian, but also it's good for the movement. It's good for us as a group. And this idea of destroying patriarchy, we're not accepting it as it is. We don't want patriarchy. We don't want to be we don't want to be well adjusted to a sick system and accepted by it. Absolutely not.
I don't know if Michelle was going to this place, but what you said kept me thinking. And of course, this is becoming a political lesbian, or going back to lesbianism is not something that is a response of hating men and don't want to be around them. It's just a part of opens your eyes. But what is what is deeper than that is that you realize that your love for women has always been there, and the desire of you having another life, a respect for life, a fulfilled life, a life with dignity. It's a desire that it's in every woman. Like, yes, even if they cannot put words into it, we all desire a life, a calm life, a happy life, a respectful life. And I think that is what is truly behind going into lesbianism. Not just that men are stinky, I don't want to be around them. Yes, they are stinky, but that is not they are not the reason that why we came back to ourselves through lesbianism. The reason behind that is that we love ourselves, and we love ourselves, and we want to love freely other women without all of these femininity stuff and masculinity. And I think most people that doesn't have like education in feminism tend to think that we go to lesbianism because we only hate men and we don't want to be with them, and we just like change like, oh, and now I like women and now I'm going to have sex with a woman. And it's like, no, it's not like that. It's not like you wake up one day and say like, oh, okay. It's a really deep process within yourself. And when you look into lesbianism, you have to see yourself and see what things of heterosexual socialization you are taking to that space, because heterosexuality, compulsive heterosexuality, doesn't end when you stop dating men. You have to take out all of those dynamics from yourself, even in the way that you treat yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to say was is exactly that. But what I was going to say, that political lesbianism is not an alternative to men. It's about never knowing there was an alternative in the first place, and then coming to that understanding of how heterosexuality is an institution and how it is a patriarchal framework to oppress us.
Yeah. And I think, yes, it is not, as you say, Tabata, just because men are shit. However, a very important and the first step to take is to realize that men are not good for us, is to realize that heterosexuality doesn't work for us, is to realize that in order for anything good to happen to us, we have to step out of that. And for some women, it means just having a life of celibacy and being a spinster, which is fine. And for some women, it means that at some point, the mental space that exists when men are no longer part of your life, colonizing every moment, taking everything from you, then you realize that there is something else. You know, like the end of something is the beginning of something else in many cases. But here, it really, for me, was like really an eye opener. And I've seen so many women leave heterosexuality, didn't think they would be ever attracted to women, but then it happened that they were, because in that space that men were no longer colonizing, they saw themselves, they saw other women, and they saw a possibility. And I think that's much more maybe accurate and honest way that a lot of women come to it, rather than, oh yeah, as you were saying, Tabata, here's men, no, I don't want that, and then I'm gonna just pick up a woman and become a lesbian. This is not how it works. But I think this is how it's being portrayed. Like, you cannot choose to be a lesbian, because this is not actually what the process looks like.
And I think a lot of women who are in heterosexuality would admit that they are closer to with the women in their lives, their friends, than they ever are with their husbands or boyfriends. So it's there. All women have the potential to be a lesbian. They just need to get rid of the man first. That's the first step. Dump him.
Yeah. Do you know, it's funny, I was saying that the other day, that I remember when I was still in heterosexuality, I had a lot of trouble connecting emotionally with that man. And no wonder, it was not me. You know, there was just like such a lack of richness, of, you know, depth of emotions, of anything. And I remember being in the bus and having a conversation with a woman I didn't know. I had not met before, and we just had this conversation, and it went really quite deep. You know, that it was not super long journey as well. And I remember leaving the bus thinking, this is a conversation I'm having with a total stranger who's a woman that I cannot have with any man in my life, including the one that I chose to marry. How is that possible? And I hear so many women having this kind of a reaction, this kind of experiences where they realize the void of many men, and that in fact maybe what we're looking for is not in heterosexuality at all.
I think that is something that we all go through. That's why when I introduce myself, I make that statement that I always felt affinity towards women, because for me it was super clear from the beginning, even in my family, that the secure people were the women, that the ones that could help me, that the ones that will answer my questions, take care of me, will teach me things without being rude, the ones that I can tell secrets or tell secret desires or stuff like that, always were the women. Like they are always there. We all have this super close friend. We, especially in the internet era, we have like this online friend that knows everything about us. And even in the heterosexuality, we have this really deep connection with women, and somehow we are like, oh, she's everything that I look for in a man and stuff like that. And it's like super horrible because you are already being conscious that a man could never give you what you need, because you are aware that your friend is everything that you need in your life, the comprehension, the affection, the care, everything. But you're like somehow like, no, but I have to find that in a man. And it's like, no man on earth will ever give you not even something close to it.
Yeah, I see a lot of that on Instagram and TikTok as well. Women who have left heterosexuality and are now in relationships with women, saying things like, all of these things that I never wanted to do for a man, I said I would never do for a man. I'd quite happily do them for a woman. Turns out that I wasn't nonchalant. I was just a lesbian.
That's the thing as well. The way that these kind of sentences are framed to me is problematic, though, because as much as I agree, with what they say, it turns out I was a lesbian means it turns out I was a lesbian all along. And that's
all along, yeah.
Because it kind of closes the door to women who might want to investigate, who maybe don't feel like they're lesbians because they never had that, mythical, typical lesbian experience that from the age of 12. Like, for sure. That's what kept me. It kept me in heterosexuality so long, because the idea is that when you're 12 that you're attracted to girls, nothing bad happens to you, or it doesn't actually, even if it's bad, it doesn't actually put you back in compulsory heterosexuality. No matter what, you will carry on loving women. You are very sure, very aware, and you arrive in adulthood with this fully formed knowledge that you are and will remain a lesbian all your life. And for a lot of us, it's not like that. I've had young experiences that made me think that I loved women when I was young, but a lot of things that also put me back, including parental pressure, put me back into the heterosexual box over and over and over again. And I ended up married very young. I was 21. Do not get married. Do not get married at 21. Okay, it's way too young.
Do not get married ever, not to a man.
Ever, but like, it should be a law that you cannot get married before your brain is completely, developed. Anyway. But then, I was in heterosexuality thinking, well, I can't be a lesbian because I would have known by now. I would have found, if I really was a lesbian, I would have found a way. And then this kind of, oh, you're born this way, therefore you must know, that kind of keeps you in. It keeps you from coming out. It keeps you from escaping. Yes. And so I guess the last question I wanted to kind of address today is, why now? We explain what is important to us and why we're doing this, but is there something specific happening right now that maybe prompted you to join this kind of project, to create this kind of project?
It's because I really truly believe that all women need to hear this. That we all need to at least have the option to censor women and decenter men in our lives, and that's just something that's not been available to so many women.
I really think that we are facing a really historical time where fascism and colonialism and racism, it's like in super high levels of violence, and we are witnessing so many horrible things. And it's not only that males are actively destroying themselves and the earth, but also we are seeing the younger generations getting super conservative and going back to ideas that we linked, I don't know, my granny and stuff like that, thinking oh, women are for having kids. And I hear women in their 20s saying stuff like that, and I really got scared, what is happening? And also that I really believe that we need to put feminism out there, real radical feminism, because everything has been digested by capitalism. And for me, lesbian feminism is the most radical of all feminisms, and we are in a moment where we need radical feminism. We need to take back our energy, our power to protect us and to protect the earth, because they are they are getting like super aggressive, and we need not to respond to them, but to get along with ourselves and build a really strong community within us. And we have now the internet, something that our feminist predecessors didn't have. So I think that it's important that we use it in a constructive way, and in a way that brings hope to women. And for me, lesbianism is that place.
Yeah. I see two things happening. One is this incredible shift of women rejecting heterosexuality. I see it for a while. I think post 4B, I mean 4B was incredible to witness, but women really completely understanding the principle of it, understanding and witnessing the violence that you described, Tabata, that is just increasing, which means to me every time I hear another story of violence, the thing is, I see women being more and more aware and stepping more and more away and keep on saying, oh yeah, so not all men, but bloody hell, that's quite a lot of them, and so on and so on. And these waves and waves of women realizing, and I hope, realizing quicker and quicker that if they want to survive, they can't be around them. And I think that's and when they are around them, that they are being exploited. The rate of divorce initiated by women increasing all the time. Excellent news. And then this return to extremely traditionalist value, the far right, the racism, the misogyny, I don't know how many Gen Z boys who think that women should obey in a marriage, which is twice as much as boomers, generation of my parents. And I think that is a reaction as well. Like all this is a kind of reaction to one another. What I'm very worried about is seeing for example, what's going on in the US with this absolutely extreme return to women in the kitchen, women not allowed to have any body autonomy, lack of abortion right, lack of ability to not have babies if they don't want them. It's extremely scary. Women are, as a result of that, opting out of heterosexuality. But then what do patriarchy do? Cost of living crisis, make sure everything is out of price. You cannot live on your own. You need to couple up because everything is completely expensive. Then removing anti-discrimination laws, so women are less able to work and make a living for themselves. I'm very worried about the financial shift. I think it should really not be overlooked. And unfortunately, a lot of feminists these days are really focused on one aspect of women's oppression. And here we can see all this is very linked. So to me, talking about it right now in this context is really important, because it can give women the tools to understand what's going on and to understand that really falling for the propaganda of the trad wife is the last thing you need to do. Like, you need to step away, you need to run away from this idea that a man is going to protect you, when really, how many of them were busy collecting information on how to rape us and get away with it, 62 million or something. So the timing is crucial. I think we're living absolutely incredible historic time, not only bad, like very bad, but at the same time, there's a lot of hope. And I hope that these women find us, that we can have a conversation, like, let's.
Yeah, there is hope, because you can see it across all the various social media platforms that women are having that shift and switch in the way they're thinking. Whereas it used to be, oh, this man isn't very good, but I can train him to be better, or we can collectively make the men in the world better. And it was like the men had some sort of bargaining chip, or, well, we'll behave better if you comply to your own subordination. But women are now realizing that no matter what they do, men are just going to get worse and worse and treat women worse and worse and more violently. So they're now taking that step away. They might not have the feminist analysis yet, but the 4B movement is growing, for example, and a lot of women are just choosing just to be single. And I think that that's a real shift in the last maybe 5 years, maybe less. So hopefully, yeah, more women will find this channel, find the book, and start to open that door and be curious.
What I would really hope for is, you know, like I see a lot of individual women understanding, and I think every woman who are in an abusive relationship understand that at some point there is this moment where you're like, okay, I've been trying to educate him, I've been trying to change him, I've been trying to make him better because I know he can be better. And at some point you're like, actually, if I carry on doing that, I will die. Okay, he will kill me. I have to leave, I have to save myself. And I think this is the time where, as a feminist movement, we need to do that in a kind of a collective level, that at some point, forming the patriarchy is not going to work. That you cannot change a system that is designed to kill you. You cannot make it better. It's not going to work better for you if they change a little bit that law, because you know, even if they change that law, they're never going to implement it anyway. And at some point, we need to have this like collective consciousness that we have individually. Stop trying to change the patriarchy, leave. And that's what I see women doing when they exit heterosexuality. But I think that giving women the tools of political lesbianism is a way to say, you know, this is a real creative alternative for something else, for something completely different that is not patriarchy. And let's build it.
Totally.
Totally. Now, do we have any final point before because we cannot talk about this forever. We're going to have some more conversation, but we have to close this one at some point. Any final words for today?
Yes, I think that something important that you say at the end is creative, because this cycle of only trying to reform or react to patriarchy is wasting our precious energy. And I think that that energy, we should put it into creating something within women only and animals and nature. Like, we have to put all of that energy, of course, put limits, get rights, but also get all of that energy flow into our communities and into our daily life, not only react to them, but create an alternative.
And
Creativity.
that's the conversation that we're going to have next week. Yes. Yes. So if this question resonates with you, if you enjoy the conversation today, you can subscribe, you can like, you can stay connected. Please also share this with a friend who you think might appreciate the conversation. This is space for respectful, thoughtful engagement. So we will moderate the comment to keep it that way. And of course, this is a woman-only space. We are centering women's voices and experience, if that goes without saying. So we'll see you at the next episode. In the meantime, stay safe, stay curious, and stay away from men. Bye.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.